Book 21. The Contest with Odysseus's Bow. Bright-eyed Athene then placed inside the heart of wise Penelope, Icarius's daughter, the thought that she should set up in Odysseus's halls the bow and the grey iron axes for the suitors as a competition and the prelude to their deaths. She climbed the lofty staircase to her chamber, picked up in her firm grip a curved key made of bronze, beautifully fashioned with an ivory handle. With her attendants, she went off to a storeroom in a distant corner of the house, where they kept her king's possessions, bronze and gold and iron, all finely crafted work. His well-sprung bow was there, and quivers too, with lots of painful arrows, gifts he had received from Iphitus, his friend son of Eurytus, a man like the immortals, when they'd met in Lacedaemon in Messene at the home of wise Ortilochus. Odysseus had gone there to collect a debt the people owed. Messenian men had run off with 300 sheep and seized the shepherds too, leaving Ithaca in their ships with many oars. Because of this, Odysseus, who was just a boy, had been sent a long way by his father and other senior men, part of an embassy. Iphitus was searching for 12 mares he'd lost, and sturdy mules as well, still on the teat. Later on, these animals led him to a fatal destiny, the day he met the mortal Heracles, Zeus's great-hearted son, who knew all there was to know about great exploits. Heracles slaughtered him, although he was a guest in his own home, a cruel man who didn't care about the anger of the gods or the dining table he'd set before him. After their meal, he killed him and kept the strong-hoofed mares with him at home for his own use. While Iphitus was inquiring about these horses, he got to meet Odysseus and gave him the bow. In earlier days this weapon had been used by mighty Eurytus, and when he died he'd left it for his son in his high-roofed home. Odysseus had given him a keen-edged sword and a powerful spear as well. This was the start of their close friendship. But they never bonded as mutual dinner guests. Before that happened, Zeus's son had murdered Iphitus, son of Eurytus, a man like the immortals, who gave Odysseus that bow of his. Lord Odysseus never took it when he went off to war in his black ships. It lay there in his home as a memorial to a dear friend. He carried it in his own land. When fair Penelope came to the storage room, she crossed the wooden threshold. A long time ago a skilful craftsman planed it, set it straight and true, then fitted doorposts and set shining doors in place. She quickly took the looped thong from its hook, put in the key, and with a push shoved back the bolt. Just as a bull grunts when it grazes in a meadow, that's how the key's force made the fine door creak, and it quickly swung ajar. She stepped high up onto the planking where the storage trunks were placed in which they kept their fragrant clothing. There she stretched to take the bow in its bright case down from its peg. She then sat down, placed the bow case on her knees, and wept aloud as she took out her husband's bow. When she'd had enough of her laments and tears, she went off to the hall to join the noble suitors, holding in her hands the well-sprung bow and quiver, with many pain-inflicting arrows. And with her came some servants carrying a chest which held lots of iron and bronze, her husband's battle weapons. Once the lovely lady reached the suitors, she stood there by the doorpost of the well-constructed hall with a bright veil on her face. On either side stood loyal attendant women. Then Penelope addressed the suitors with these words: "Listen to me, bold suitors, who've been ravaging this home with your incessant need for food and drink, since my husband's now been so long absent. The only story you could offer up as an excuse is that you all desire to marry me and take me as your wife. So come now, suitors, since I seem to be the prize you seek, I'll place this great bow here belonging to godlike Odysseus, and then whichever one of you can grip this bow and string it with the greatest ease, then shoot an arrow through 12 axes, all of them. I'll go with him, leaving my married home, this truly lovely house, and all these goods one needs to live, things I'll remember, even in my dreams." When she'd said this, she then told Eumaeus the loyal swineherd to set the bow and grey iron axes for the suitors. With tears in his eyes, Eumaeus picked them up and laid them out. Philetius, the goatherd, was weeping too, in another spot, once he saw his master's bow. Then Antinous addressed them both with this reproach. "You foolish bumpkins, who only think of what's going on today. What a wretched pair! Why start weeping now? Why agitate the heart inside the lady's breast? Her spirit lies in pain, now that she's lost the man she loves. So sit and eat in silence, or go outside and weep. Leave the bow here. The contest will decide among the suitors. I don't think it's going to be an easy feat to string that polished bow. Of all men here, no one is like Odysseus used to be. I saw him for myself, and I remember, though at the time I was a little child." Antinous spoke. In his chest his heart was hoping he would string the bow and then shoot an arrow through the iron. But in fact, he'd be the first to taste an arrow from brave Odysseus' hands, the very man he was disgracing shamefully as he sat in the hall, inciting all his comrades. Then among them all Telemachus spoke out with royal authority. "Well now, Zeus, son of Cronos, must have made me foolish. My dear mother, although quite sensible, says she'll be leaving with another man, abandoning this home, and I just laugh. My witless heart finds that enjoyable. So come, suitors, since your prize seems to be a woman who throughout Achaean land has no equal, not in sacred Pylos, Argos, or Mycenae, not on the mainland or in Ithaca itself. But you yourselves know this. Why should I praise my mother? So come on, don't delay this competition with excuses or use up too much time diverting your attention from this bowstring. Then we'll see. I might try the bow myself. If I can string it and shoot an arrow through the iron, I won't get so upset when my royal mother has to leave here with another man. I'd be left behind as someone capable of picking up fine prizes from my father in a contest." After he'd said this, Telemachus threw off the purple cloak covering his back, jumped up, and removed the sharp sword from his shoulders. First he set up the axes. He dug a trench, one long ditch for all of them, in a straight line. Then he stamped the earth down flat around them. Amazement gripped all those observing him to watch him organize those axes properly, although before that time he'd never seen them. Then, going and standing in the threshold, he tried to test the bow. 3 times he made it tremble as he strove to bend it, and 3 times he relaxed, hoping in his heart he'd string that bow and shoot an arrow through the iron. On his 4th attempt, as his power bent the bow, he might have strung it, but Odysseus shook his head, motioning him to stop, for all his eagerness. So Telemachus spoke out, addressing them once more with royal authority. "Well, I suppose I'll remain a coward, a weak man too, in future days, or else I'm still too young, and cannot yet rely on my own strength to guard me from a man who gets angry with me first. But come now, you men who are more powerful than me, test this bow. Let's end this competition." Once he'd said this, Telemachus placed the bow down on the ground away from him, leaning it against the polished panels of the door, and set a swift arrow there beside the bow's fine tip, then sat down again in the chair from which he'd stood. Then Antinous, Eupeithes' son, addressed them. "All you comrades, get up in order now from left to right, beginning from the place where the steward pours the wine." Antinous spoke, and what he'd just proposed they found agreeable. The first to stand up was Laodice, son of Enops, their soothsayer. He always sat furthest away beside the lovely mixing bowl, the only man hostile to their reckless acts. He was angry with the suitors, all of them. That was the man who first picked up the bow and the swift arrow. After moving to the threshold and standing there, he tried the bow but couldn't string it. His hands, which were delicate and weak, grew weary before he could succeed in stringing up the bow. He then spoke out among the suitors. "My friends, I'm not the man to string this bow. So now let someone else take hold of it. This bow will take away from many excellent men their lives and spirits, since it's far better to die than live and fail in the attempt to have what we are gathered here to get, always waiting here in hope day after day. Now every man has feelings in his heart. He desires and hopes to wed Penelope, Odysseus' wife. But when he's tried this bow and observed what happens, then let him woo another of Achaea's well-dressed women, seeking to win her with his bridal gifts, and then Penelope can wed the man who offers her the most, whose fate it is to be her husband." When Laodice had finished, He set the bow away from him, leaning it against the polished panels of the door, and placing a swift arrow by the fine bow-tip. Then he sat again on the chair he'd risen from. But Antinous took issue with what he'd just said, talking directly to him. "Laodice, that speech that passed the barrier of your teeth, what wretched, sorry words! As I listened, it made me angry. As if this bow would in fact take away the lives and spirits of the very finest men, just because you couldn't string it. Your royal mother did not produce in you the sort of man who has sufficient strength to draw a bow and shoot an arrow. But some other men among these noble suitors will soon string it." This said, Antinous called out to Melanthius, the goatherd. "Come now, Melanthius, light a fire in the hall. Set beside it a large chair with a fleece across it. And bring a hefty piece of fat. There's some inside the house, so the young men here can warm the bow and rub grease into it, then test the bow and end this contest." When he'd said this, Melanthius quickly lit a tireless fire. Then he brought a large chair up with a fleece on it and set it down beside the fire, and from inside the house fetched a large piece of fat. Then the young men warmed the bow and tested it, but they couldn't string it. Whatever strength they had was far too little. Antinous and godlike Eurymachus, the suitors' leaders, still remained. The two of them with their abilities were the finest men by far. Now the cattle herder and the keeper of the swine belonging to godlike Odysseus had gone out, both together. So Lord Odysseus himself left the house to follow after them. And then, when they'd gone beyond the gates and courtyard, he spoke, addressing them with reassuring words. "You there, cattleman and swineherd, shall I tell you something or keep it to myself? My spirit tells me I should speak to you. If Odysseus were to come back suddenly, brought from somewhere by a god, would you two be the sort of men who would defend him? Would you support the suitors or Odysseus? Answer as your heart and spirit prompt you." Then the cattle herder answered him, "O Father Zeus, would that you might fulfill this very wish. May that man come and led on by some god. Then you would know the kind of strength I have and how my hands can show my power." And then Eumaeus too made the same sort of prayer to all the gods that wise Odysseus would come back to his own home. Once Odysseus had clearly seen how firm their minds were, he spoke to them again, saying these words, "Well, here I am, in person. After suffering much misfortune, I've come home, back in the 20th year to my own land. Of those who work for me, I recognize that you're the only two who want me back. Among the rest, I've heard no one praying that my return would bring me home again. So I'll tell you both how this is going to end, and I'll speak the truth. If on my behalf some god will overcome those noble suitors, I'll bring you each a wife, and I'll provide possessions and a house built near my own. Then you'll be my companions and kinsmen of Telemachus. Come, I'll show you something, a sure sign, so you will clearly know it's me and trust me in your hearts. Here's the old scar I got from a boar's white tusk when I'd gone to Parnassus with Autolycus' sons." As he said this, Odysseus pulled aside his rags, exposing the great scar. Once those two had seen it and noted every detail, they threw their arms around the wise Odysseus, burst into tears and welcomed him, kissing his head and shoulders. Odysseus did the same. He kissed their heads and hands. They would have kept on crying until sunset if Odysseus himself hadn't called a halt and said, "Stop these laments. Let's have no more crying. Someone might come out from the hall, see us, and tell the people in the house. Let's go in, one by one, not all together. I'll go first. You come later. And let's make this our sign. All those other men, the noble suitors, will not allow the quiver and the bow to be given to me. But, good Eumaeus, as you're carrying that bow through the house, put it in my hands and tell the women to lock their room, bolt the close-fitting doors. If any of them hears the noise of men groaning or being hit inside our walls, she's to stay quiet, working where she is, and not run off outside. Now, as for you, good Philetius, I want you to lock the courtyard gates. Bolt and lash them shut. Do it quickly." After he'd said this, Odysseus went into the stately home and sat down on the chair from which he'd risen. The two men, godlike Odysseus' servants, then went in as well. Eurymachus already had the bow in hand, warming it here and there in the firelight. But even doing that, he could not string it. Then his noble heart gave out a mighty groan, and he spoke to them directly. He was angry. "It's too bad. I'm frustrated for myself and for you all. I'm not that unhappy about the marriage, though I am upset. There are many more Achaean women, some here in sea-girt Ithaca itself, others in different cities. But if we are so weak compared to godlike Odysseus that we can't string his bow, it's a disgrace which men will learn about in years to come." Antinous, Eupeithes' son, then answered him, "Eurymachus, that's not going to happen. You yourself know it. At this moment in the country there's a feast day sacred to the god. So who would bend the bow? No, set it to one side without saying anything. As for the axes, what if we let them just stand there? I don't think anyone will come into the home of Odysseus, Laertes' son, and carry them away. So come, let the steward begin to pour wine in the cups, so we can make libations. Set the curved bow to one side. In the morning, tell Melanthius the goatherd to bring in the finest goats by far from all the herds, so we can set out pieces of the thigh for Apollo, the famous archer god. Then we'll test the bow and end the contest." Antinous finished. They were pleased with what he'd said. Heralds poured water on their hands, and young men filled the mixing bowls up to the brim with drink and served them all, pouring a few drops in the cups to start the ritual. Once they'd poured libations and drunk wine to their heart's content, Odysseus, a crafty man who had a trick in mind, spoke out. "Suitors of the splendid queen, listen to me, so I can say what the heart inside my chest is prompting me to state. It's a request, a plea, especially to Eurymachus and godlike Antinous, since what he said was most appropriate, that for the moment you should stop this business with the bow and turn the matter over to the gods. In the morning a god will give the strength to whoever he desires. But come now, give me the polished bow. So here among you I can test my power and arms and see if I still have strength in my supple limbs, the way I used to have, or if my travels and my lack of food have quite destroyed it." Odysseus finished. They were all extremely angry, afraid that he might string the polished bow. Then Antinous, speaking to him directly, took Odysseus to task. "You wretched stranger, your mind lacks any sense. You've none at all. Aren't you content to share a feast with us, such illustrious men, without being disturbed or lacking any food, and then to hear what we say to one another as we speak? No other beggar or stranger listens in on what we say. The wine, so honey-sweet, has injured you, as it harms other men when they gulp it down and drink too much. Wine befuddled even great Eurytion, the centaur, in brave Perithous' house when he'd gone to the Lapiths. Afterwards, when his heart went blind from drinking wine, in a mad fit he committed evil acts in Perithous' home. Grief seized the heroes. They jumped up and hauled him out of doors through the gate, then cut off his ears and nose with pitiless bronze. His wits were reckless, and he went on his way bearing madness in his foolish heart. And that's the reason the fight between centaurs and men began. But he first discovered evil in himself when loaded down with wine. And so I say, if you string the bow, you'll face great trouble. You'll not get gentle treatment anywhere, not in this land. We'll ship you off at once in a black ship over to King Achaetus, who likes to kill and torture everyone. You won't escape from him. So drink your wine in peace and don't compete with younger men." Wise Penelope then answered him and said, "Antinous, it's neither good nor proper to deny guests of Telemachus a chance, no matter who it is comes to this house. And if, trusting in his strength and power, the stranger strings Odysseus' great bow, do you think he'll take me to his home and make me his wife? I'm sure he himself carries no such hope in that chest of his. So none of you should be at dinner here with sorrow in his heart because of him. That would be undignified." Then Eurymachus, son of Polybus, answered her, "Wise Penelope, daughter of Icarius, we do not think this man will take you home. That would be wrong. But we would be ashamed by public gossip from both men and women if later on some low-born Achaean said something like, 'Those men wooing the wife of that fine man are far worse than him. They can't even string his polished bow. And yet another man, a beggar who came here on his travels, did so with ease and then shot through the iron. That's what men will say, and it would be a slur on us." Then wise Penelope replied, "Eurymachus, there is no way at all there will be in this district good reports of those dishonouring and eating up a noble's home. Why turn the matter now into a slur? This stranger is very large and strongly built. Furthermore, he claims he comes by birth from a good father. So come now, give him the polished bow, and let us see. I will say this to you, and it will happen. If he strings the bow and Apollo grants him glory, I'll dress him in some lovely clothes at cloak and tunic, and give him a sharp spear as a defence from dogs and men, and a two-edged sword. I'll give him sandals for his feet, and send him wherever his heart and spirit tell him." Shrewd Telemachus then answered her, "Mother, among Achaeans no man has a right stronger than my own to give the bow to anyone I wish, or to withhold it. None of those who rule in rocky Ithaca, or in the islands neighbouring Elis where horses graze. Among these men no one will deny my will by force if I wish to give the bow even to this stranger as an outright gift to take away with him. But you should go up to your own chamber and keep busy with your proper work, the loom and spindle, and tell your women to go about their tasks. The bow will be a matter for the men, especially me, since the power in this house is mine." Penelope, astonished, went back to her rooms, taking to heart the prudent words her son had said. With her servant women she walked up to her room and then wept for Odysseus, her dear husband, till bright-eyed Athene cast sweet sleep on her eyes. The worthy swineherd had picked up the curving bow and was carrying it, but all the suitors cried out in the hall. One of those arrogant young men then said something like, "What are you doing, you wretched swineherd, carrying that bow, you idiot? You'll soon be with the swine all alone, with no men around, being eaten by those swift dogs you yourself have raised, if Apollo and other immortal gods act with graciousness to us." That's what they said. So, though he was carrying the bow, he put it down, afraid because inside the hall so many men were yelling at him. But then from across the room Telemachus shouted out a threat. "Old man, keep on moving up here with that bow. You'll soon regret obeying them all. I'm younger than you, but I might force you out into the fields and throw rocks at you. I'm the stronger man. I wish my hands had that much strength and power over all the suitors in the house. I'd send some of them soon enough on their way home, out of this house, and they'd be miserable, for they keep coming up with wicked plans." Telemachus finished speaking, but the suitors all had a hearty laugh at his expense, relaxing their bitter anger at Telemachus. Meanwhile the swineherd kept on going through the hall carrying the bow. He came to shrewd Odysseus and placed it in his hands. Then he called the nurse Euryclea and said to her, "Wise Euryclea, Telemachus is telling you to lock up the closely fitted doorway to this hall. If anyone hears groans inside this room or any noise from men within these walls, she's not to run outside but stay where she is, carrying out her work in silence." After he'd said this, her words could find no wings. So she locked the doors of that well-furnished hall, and Philetius, without a word, slipped outside and locked the courtyard gates inside the sturdy walls. A cable from a curved ship was lying there, under the portico, made of papyrus fibres. With that, he lashed the gates, then went inside, sat down again on the seat where he'd got up, and observed Odysseus, who already had the bow. He was turning it this way and that, testing it in different ways to see if, while its lord was gone, worms had nibbled on the horns. One of the men with a glance beside him would say something like, "This man knows bows. He must be an expert. Either he has bows like this stored at home, or else he wants to make one. That's why he's turning it around in all directions. That beggar's really skilled in devious tricks." And then another of those arrogant young men would make some further comment. "Well, I hope the chance that this brings him some benefit matches his ability to string this bow." That's how the suitors talked. But shrewd Odysseus, once he'd raised the bow and looked it over on all sides, then, just as someone really skilled at playing the lyre and singing has no trouble when he loops a string around a brand-new peg, tying the twisted sheep's gut down at either end, that's how easily Odysseus strung that great bow. Holding it in his right hand, he tried the string. It sang out, resonating like a swallow's song beneath his touch. Grief overwhelmed the suitors. The skin on all of them changed colour. And then Zeus gave out a sign with a huge peal of thunder. Lord Odysseus, who had endured so much, rejoiced that crooked-minded Kronos' son had sent an omen. Then he picked up a swift arrow lying by itself on the table there beside him. The other ones, which those Achaeans would soon be familiar with, were stored inside the hollow quiver. He set it against the bow on the bridge, pulled the notched arrow and the bowstring back, still sitting in his seat, and with a sure aim let the arrow fly. It did not miss, not even a single top on all the axe heads. The arrow, weighted with bronze, went straight through and out the other end. And then Odysseus called out to Telemachus, "Telemachus, the stranger sitting in your halls has not disgraced you. I did not miss my aim or work too long to string that bow. My strength is still intact in spite of all the suitors' scornful jibes. Now it's time to get a dinner ready for these Achaeans, while there's still some light, then entertain ourselves in different ways with singing and the lyre. These are things which should accompany a banquet." As he spoke, he gave a signal with his eyebrows. Telemachus, godlike Odysseus's dear son, cinched up his sword, closed his fist around a spear, moved close beside his father, right by his seat, and stood there, fully armed, with glittering bronze.